Alright, well, we're back with another set of Klub Outside answers from the man himself to help round off 2023. As always, Kubo is fielded questions from fans directly on his platform, and he picks and chooses which ones he wants to answer. Sometimes the answers are little more than light-hearted superfluous fluff, but other times, Kubo will drop a huge piece of lore or a massive revelation completely out of nowhere. This time, the questions revolve around the Espada's aspects of death, Komamura's potential familial relationship with Yoruichi, and more. However, before we get started, I want to say a big thank you for all of the kind words and well wishes over the Christmas period, and I hope you all had an amazing festive time celebrating too. Get anything Bleach related for Christmas that you're particularly proud of? Let me know down in the comments. But back to the video at hand, we'll start things off by discussing Nell's aspect of death, something that was never revealed in the source material itself, but the answer that Kubo provides here, I think, opens a real can of worms regarding the Espada themselves and how their ranking actually works, something that's been called into question a number of times at this point. During his battle with Soifon, Baragon reveals to her that each Espada governs a single aspect of death, 10 causes of death that are central to each Espada's abilities, thoughts, and the very reason for their existence. The aspects themselves are loneliness, aging, sacrifice, emptiness, despair, destruction, ecstasy, madness, greed, and rage. Honestly, while a cool concept, I always thought the idea of the aspects of death was a bit half-baked, and it kind of came out of nowhere. How do the aspects even work? Baragon makes it sound like they are absolutely integral to the Espada's very existence, but the Espada come into being much like any other hollow for the most part. Really, the only Espada that this makes sense for is Stark, who split himself into the two beings we see today to avoid the intense solitude, the intense loneliness that he felt. Anyway, Kubo was recently asked this question in regards to the aspects, and it reads as follows. Is the aspect of death ruled by the Espada the same for different people as long as they share the same number, like Harabel and Neliel? If it's different, I'd like to know what Neliel's aspect of death was when she was an Espada. Now, right off the bat, this is a bit of a weird one. While Nell's aspect of death, like I said, was never revealed in the source material itself, it was actually revealed in the mobile game Bleach Brave Souls as part of the tie-in promotion with Can't Fear Your Own World, where the Espada were given Hogyoku Enhanced Resurrection. Nell's aspect was revealed to be lamentation, and that made sense to me. You get the impression she's potentially haunted by regrets, and she laments both becoming a hollow in the first place and surrendering her humanity, as well as lamenting those that she was unable to save, such as Pesce and Dondachaka. Basically, lamentation is a fancy way of saying her aspect is regret, and I thought that worked really well. However, based on this answer, Kubo seems to have either changed his mind or not had anything to do with her aspect being lamentation in the first place, which is odd, as Kubo supposedly oversaw the creation of those special designs exclusive to the game. Kubo's answer, provided in clarity by Daily Bleach Scans, reads as follows. The aspect of death represented by an Espada is the same for different people as long as they share the same number. Both Harabel and Neliel represent sacrifice. This is one of those answers to me where I feel like it just brings up more questions, to be totally honest, and in some ways throws the entire established structure of the Espada out of the window. Now, in Can't Fear Your Own World, both Grimjo and Lupi were revealed to represent destruction, but I thought that was just a one-off, and in fact that was the sole reason they were so antagonistic towards each other. But no, now the numerical ranking determines the aspect of death. But that, in turn, doesn't seem to jive at all with what Baragon said initially. How can the aspects of death be so central to each Espada's very core, their very being, if it simply depends on what number they are? For example, when Neutra was originally the 8th Espada, was he then governing madness, and it then changed to despair simply because he was later promoted to the 5th? So then it has nothing to do with who he really is at all, and certainly isn't the reason for his existence. It also robs the Espada of some of their individuality and doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. If one day Aizen decided to swap Stark and Barragan for no reason, then all of a sudden Stark is suddenly governing aging. But in Barragan's case, more so than any other Espada, his aspect of death is his power. It very much represents that. So how does that work? This revelation also calls into question the Espada ranking in totality. We originally thought the Espada were ranked from 10 to 1 by their lethality, then it became from 9 to 0, then it became they were ranked by their Reiatsu and not their lethality, but now it seems like based on this answer, they're ranked purely by their aspects of death, which would imply it's not really a ranking at all, per se. Because if the aspect of death is unchangeable, if that cannot change, if it has to stay the same, then that is purely what that number represents, nothing else. Because the person, the individual attached to that number, doesn't matter anymore. They're just a conduit for the aspect and can be changed out as necessary. Ulquiorra isn't ranked 4th now for any other reason other than he happens to somehow embody the idea of nothingness or emptiness. Look at it this way. I'll boil it down using the example we were already given. When Nell was booted out of the Espada, Harabel wasn't promoted because she was strong enough to be the 3rd Espada. It's because now the 3rd Espada demanded an Arrancar that could embody the idea of sacrifice above all else. It's the same with Grimjo and Lupi, but it kind of goes against everything the source material taught us. Honestly, it feels like a bit of a mess, and exactly the kind of question and answer that I created this series to discuss. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this one down below in the comments. Next up, there's always been a lot of mystery surrounding both Komamura and Yoruichi for different but albeit similar reasons. Komamura is a wolfman from a hidden cult-like clan of ancient sinners, while Yoruichi has the ability to transform into a cat, something Kubo revealed not too long ago was a result of her Shihoin family bloodline. Fundamentally, they're both Shinigami who have an unusual animalistic heritage of sorts, and a recent question wondered if they might be related in some way because of it. The question posed on Kubo's Q&A platform reads as follows. Is there any special relationship between the Komamura family and the Shihoin family in Bleach, since they are dogs and cats? Honestly, the most interesting part of the question, however, is the mention of the Komamura family. Obviously, we're well aware of the Shihoin family and their standing in the world of Bleach as nobles, but the idea of the Komamura family is one that has never really been explored. Of course, we meet Komamura's unnamed great-grandfather in the Thousand Year Blood War arc, a sinister, gigantic wolf who exists within a shadowy cave, and also acts as the elder of Komamura's Wolfman clan. But Kubo's answer actually reveals a much more intriguing insight than the question originally let on, and the answer reads, Komamura is the surname given to him by Genryusai when he was picked up, and is not a family name. This is yet another one of those throwaway answers that I feel is actually quite a big deal. We knew that Yamamoto was responsible for taking in Komamura after he abandoned his clan and decided to try living in the light, and for this selfless act on behalf of the Captain Commander, Komamura dedicated his life to him. This devotion to Yamamoto is one of the first things we ever learn about Komamura, and it's also the driving force behind his downfall in the Thousand Year Blood War arc. But we've never really known the circumstances behind Komamura being brought into the Gotei 13, and while we still don't really, it's cool to have a better understanding of the depths to which Yamamoto changed Komamura's life. This was apparently more than Yamamoto extending an olive branch to someone who was in need. He's completely rehabilitated Komamura with an entire identity of his own. There is no Komamura family. It seems likely to me he received the name Sajin from his clan, especially as the Great Elder uses it with such affection, but these Wolfman sinners don't belong to any particular family and therefore are likely from all corners of the world. The idea of Yamamoto taking Komamura in and bestowing him with a name is crazy, and I wish the two of them had actually interacted within the story. That would have been nice. It almost makes Komamura another surrogate son of Yamamoto's, and it really explains why the former 7th Division captain felt such a drive to honour Yamamoto and his life, and avenge it when it was robbed of him. I wonder how long ago this took place as well. It seems like an unusually kind thing of Yamamoto to do. I don't think it can have been that long ago, since we see familiar characters like Tosen and Aizen when Komamura enters the Gotei 13, so it makes sense it would be the more welcoming and altruistic version of the head captain. We know how important names are in Bleach though, and for Yamamoto to bestow a family name upon Komamura is a huge deal for the character, especially since he's arrived from a place that's very much on the fringes of society. Giving the Wolfman the name Komamura is like a way of inducting him into civilized society itself, allowing him to live among the Seirete and among the Shinigami. I'm kind of assuming here that Yamamoto knew Komamura's true identity from the moment they first met, but again, the details are spotty at best. During Komamura's introduction, he mentions that because of his appearance, he was shunned by all, but Yamamoto took him in. So I'm wondering if Komamura wandered around for a while without his face coverings, perhaps among the Rukon districts and the citizens there, and found only hostility. And it was at that point that he began wearing his veil. In fact, I think we see a glimpse of this earlier Komamura when he first meets Tosen. His face is uncovered, but he's consciously hiding his spiritual pressure to try and remain unnoticed. So clearly by this point he's experienced some prejudice due to how he looks, but Yamamoto hasn't yet found him. It's really interesting stuff and opens up a bunch of questions about Komamura's history and his earliest days within the Gotei 13. Moving on, Zanpakuto have always been a slight mystery in Bleach lore, despite getting a decent amount of exposure and detail in the 1000-Year Blood War arc. Kubo was asked the following question regarding Zanpakuto growth. Does the blade of a Zanpakuto grow as it develops? And Kubo answered with a translation courtesy of M Shadows once again as follows: the sealed Asauchi form remains unchanged. However, its Shikai form will change accordingly to its growth. This is a bit of a nebulous one, and to be honest, I'm not certain I'm fully understanding it correctly. Asauchi have always been a slightly weird concept. Thanks to the 1000-Year Blood War arc, we know that Oetsu forges Asauchi, which are then passed down to the Soul Society for new recruits to train with and eventually imprint their souls upon, transforming them into Zanpakuto. So it makes sense to me that the form of the Asauchi wouldn't change. It's just a vessel essentially for the Shinigami to then form a basis with. That being said, certain characters have differently shaped base form blades. For example, Hitsugaya and Unohana wield enormous swords, while the Zero Division all have unusual Asauchi that take the form of something other than a katana, like Tenjiro's oar, for example. And when explaining Asauchi in chapter 529, Oetsu does explicitly reference the Zero Division as working the same as every other Shinigami, so I wonder if their strange weapons are a result of their Asauchi morphing upon gaining the power of the Royal Palace, because presumably those strange passive abilities they have that are unrelated to their Zanpakuto, they didn't have them before, I'm guessing, so maybe their Zanpakuto changed at the same time. Anyway, that is total speculation on my part. Interestingly, during this explanation by Oetsu, we see Zaraki stealing an Asauchi off a corpse. Now, this is a new panel. We've never seen this shot of him before, and it doesn't look like his blade, which is really odd. That would imply his Asauchi changed upon being with him, since it's definitely not his Shikai. So maybe the Asauchi can change after all, but maybe once it's changed once with a Shinigami, it can't then change back. Anyway, where do these differently shaped blades come from? Is it personal preference on the part of the Shinigami? Except I imagine they are very unlikely to get a say in it whatsoever. And then you've got characters like Kyoraku, whose Asauchi presumably created a second blade once Katen split into Katen Kyokotsu. And then Kubo mentions that the Shikai form will change accordingly with its growth. What does that mean? Is that just referencing how a Shinigami's weapon will grow in size depending on their spiritual pressure? so the stronger they get naturally, the bigger their Zanpakuto will become. Isshin, of course, explains how Captain-class Shinigami are all managing the size of their Zanpakuto, or else they'd be swinging around skyscraper-sized blades, so is that all this is referring to? How, again, taking Kyoraku as an example, his scimitars would have just continued to grow and grow the more his Zanpakuto developed until he kind of conscientiously put a cap on how big they would become. After exploring this, I'm actually most intrigued by the notion that Zaraki's Asauchi seems to have transformed, despite Kubo saying they shouldn't be able to. Maybe it really is a once per Shinigami thing, but I didn't think that was how Asauchi worked, to be honest. I thought they were essentially just empty containers within which a Shinigami would then begin to pour their soul through training and bonding. Either way, it's an intriguing one. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And finally, we normally end on a light-hearted revelation, but this time, I wanted to share something a little different, and I didn't really know what other video to put it in. An answer that hasn't come from the Klub Outside Q&A. During part 2 of the 1000-Year Blood War arc anime, we were treated to a lot of new information regarding the Quincy Vollständig of several sternritter, including their names and enhanced holy forms, which were transformed via Sklaverei. In particular, we learned a lot about the different Bambis and their respective forms, including full ability sets, but ironically, despite seeing her Vollständig in action, we didn't learn anything additional about the leader of the Bambis, Bambietta's holy form. That's changed, however, thanks to production notes released as part of Bleach EX, which went into greater detail about the new enhanced designs of the Bambi's holy forms, revealing the name of Bambietta's Vollständig to be Zophiel, or the Blaze of God. Honestly, that's a really cool name, and very fitting for Bambietta and her Schrift. I also think it would have worked well for Bazby too, but there you go. Whether he'll ever get his terrible Vollständig expanded upon, we'll have to see. There are some more details here too. When enhanced by Sklaverei, Zophiel gains what looks like a new chest piece, along with boots and gloves. However, my absolute favourite detail, and one that unfortunately didn't seem to make it into the anime, is that Bambietta's Vollständig was going to change when she became a zombie. Now, maybe the change would have only occurred if she had then gone on to enhance it with Sklaverei, though I'm not really sure that makes sense. Anyway, it's difficult to make out, but the name of her Vollständig when zombified is Zombiel, which is really funny. That's a great name, and the wings turn slightly paler, withering and drooping behind her. Now her gloves as well appear almost clawed, and her boots have tendrils flowing from the cuffs. Honestly, it's a great idea, fantastic name, and I really wish we'd seen it. Alright, but that's it for this edition of the Klub Outside Q&A Roundup. Again, as always, I really hope you enjoyed it. What was your favourite question and answer here? What do you think about the aspects of death? That one is really weird to me. Like I said, it seems to have opened a massive can of worms regarding the Espada rankings. That one is all up in the air as far as I'm concerned. What do you think about Komamura getting his name, his family name, from Yamamoto? That feels like quite a big deal to me as well. And how do you feel about the way Asauchi can, or apparently cannot, change shape and size, and of course the new details about Bambietta's Vollständig? I'd love to hear all of your thoughts down in the comments below. That's it for the video, guys. As always, I want to end by saying a massive thank you to my Patreon supporters. I really appreciate each and every one of you so very much. And if you like what I do here on YouTube, you can go and support me over there as well to get your name in the credits just like this, and to get every video I release absolutely ad-free. But that's it from me, guys. Until next time, I'll catch you later, and I'll see you then.